Sandeep, before we talk about the deal at hand, the MRFA, which has cleared, I think the third last clearance stage in the government. There's two more left. The final being the Cabinet Committee on Security, post which the expectation is that when French President Macron visits India, maybe next month or the month after, the deal would be signed to buy 114 Rafale fighter jets. We already have 36 of them, which we bought after the MMRCA competition, and that was an emergency purchase. So, Sandeep, I want to get to that history first, because it's been a while. Like you said, it's been 20 years. We only have vague memories of it. I have vague memories of it. To better understand where we are at with the MRFA, I want to talk about the history of the MMRCA deal. What was the situation back then that the Air Force had felt this need to sort of, look for a fighter jet? How was this competition actually held? In my mind, I've always thought of kara kaise hoga? Were they fighting against each other? Were they placed in a hangar and measurements were taken ki kaun sa lamba hai, kaun sa chota hai, kiska missile bada hai? Just kidding. But really, so this how that competition was held and how the French Rafale turned out to be the winner.
Great story there, Dave. And I think there's a book in the Indian multi-role fighter aircraft program acquisition, when it actually gets done. By the way, I have a feeling that it's going to get done this time, right? There are no more delays. It is now or never. If it doesn't happen in the next couple of months, it probably will never happen, because the pressures now have gone beyond break point, and as you know, the geopolitical scenario now, with the way it's been, it is. And again, 21 days into the new year, and we feel like it's already been midpoint to the year. But this requirement for the MMRCA was always seen as a one-off purchase, off-the-shelf purchase of fighter jets. It was actually just Mirages. It began with a requirement for 126 Mirages.
Also French.
All French. And it's in the Kargil war, when the IAF was super impressed with the Mirage 2000's performance, bombing Tiger Hill and all of those places. And they said, we need more Mirages because we're losing MiG-21s. The LCA hadn't flown then, right? So it was a few years before. It was 2 years before the LCA's maiden flight. They said, we need a stopgap foreign acquisition. American fighters were not open to us in those days, right? This was just early days, just after the end of the Cold War. So the Air Force projected a requirement for 126 Mirage 2000-5s, the modern, the newest variant at that time. And they were so careful about it, where one of the air chiefs who was pushing the procurement said that, we were so careful, we wanted this deal to go through. We said, don't even make it the -5, because the MOD is going to say, oh, that's a new aircraft, you'll have to go through a whole new procurement process. So they said additional Mirages. So they pushed it as a requirement for additional Mirages, which was a couple of $1 billion then, a lot of money even back in the day. And then, lo and behold, the government changed in 2004. You had the UPA that came in and said, you can't buy such a large quantity of aircraft, 126 aircraft from one company, no competition, nothing. So they rebooted the whole thing and they said, open it out to other global manufacturers. And by then, the Americans were coming in very big and strong. So they said, we want our aircraft to be part of this contest as well. So they pushed for the F-16 and the F-18. The Russians were already there with the MiG-29, which they pushed a modern version of. Upgraded version, the MiG-35. The Gripen also came in, which is the Swedish aircraft. And you had the French with the Mirage. Now, the French said, look, we're shutting down the Mirage 2000 line. You take the production line. They tried one last attempt to kind of sell the aircraft. We said, no, we're going in for the MMRCA.
Oh, so they offered, you take it and you build it.
You take it, build it, upgrade it, do what you want. Because we are switching entirely to the Rafale. So when that didn't happen, they pitched the Rafale. They said, we are not selling the Mirage, we will give you the Rafale. That began with the RFI, I think in 2007 was when it began. The contest, everything took about 7 years. I mean, it was 7 rigorous years. It was almost exactly the way you mentioned, with the measuring tape going there to every individual aircraft. You had Air Force teams flying to the different countries, evaluating these aircraft in the field, looking at their performance, their characteristics. And at that time also, it was a very, very big deal. I remember the figures were staggering. $10 billion, right? almost 20 years back. $10 billion was at a time when I think the defense budget, India's defense budget, was about $20 billion, 20 or 30 billion. At that time also, it was seen as a very big deal, right? Now, when the Air Force selected the Rafale among all the aircraft, they evaluated the F-16. They said, there's no chance we're going to take the F-16. The same aircraft is across the border.
Right.
The F-18 wasn't fit for purpose. The Gripen was a American engine. So they said, look, the Rafale is the best thing. Politically, it aligns with us. And this is anyway the aircraft that we started out to buy. But then the MOD, the defense ministry, the defense minister, they got sticker shock. When they looked at the price, it was like, 2 lakh crore. And I mean, I spoke to the defense minister then, and he said, look, they've gone in and they've bought such an expensive aircraft. How do we, push a deal through like this? It's such a lot of money. So they put it on the back burner. By the way, it was more than $10 billion, because from a Mirage 2000, it became something. You started out to buy a Swift Desire and you ended up with a SUV. It became that kind of an analogy. So
budget nahi tha.
Budget nahi tha. Exactly. So the thing is that you put such a big deal in front of the MOD, they're going to get intimidated. No one wants to take a decision. So it was put on the back burner. Now that continued. So the governments changed. In 2014, you had the NDA 1. And that deal again started doing the rounds. Look, the Air Force said, look, there is this thing, 126 aircraft. We need this. By then, the LCA was already getting somewhere, right? Yeah. You had the Mark 1 that was almost inducted. The Mark 1A was being pushed by Parikar. And then they came up with the government of the day, the UPA, the NDA 1. They said, look, let's not take 126 aircraft. Because if we do that, that'll mean we take everything from one country. It'll be unfair to indigenous defense industry. Yeah. Let's give our HAL, our LCA Tejas a chance. Let's buy a small quantity of these imported aircraft and build the rest in India.